Hey guys, ECRG here, and today we're going to be talking about what is a kickoff meeting. Hey guys, ECRG here, and today we're going to talk about what is a kickoff meeting in clinical research. Now, I've done a couple videos on a kickoff meeting, but I haven't exactly explained what is a kickoff meeting. And that deserved its own separate video. It didn't deserve me tying in other things with that because there is so much that goes into the planning of a kickoff meeting, the execution of a kickoff meeting, and that actually is discussed and helps the trial move forward from the kickoff meeting. So it really deserved its own separate video for that. And that's what I'm here to provide today. So first things first, what is a kickoff meeting? And what is the purpose of the kickoff meeting? So the kickoff meeting is really an opportunity for the sponsor and the CRO to come together and develop a shared vision for how the project is going to go from startup to completion. So a lot of these projects last a couple years, sometimes very, very long time, like 5-6 years. Most of them a couple years, just depends on the project. And so the kickoff meeting will usually reflect that. If there's more things, if there's going to be a ton of patients, if there's going to be a lot of vendors used, etc., then the kickoff meeting is going to tend to be longer. And most kickoff meetings are going to be about 4 to 5 hours to meaning 8-9 hours. They could really last the whole day. Just depends on what the sponsor wants to do for it. Most of the time, the CRO representatives are going to go to the sponsor's headquarters and they meet them there. We can go into a little bit about who is going to be at that meeting, but they meet them there, and then that's where the discussion takes place. So really the purpose of the kickoff meeting is to develop a plan and nail down the details of how, the high level details of how the project is going to go from start to finish. And so who is going to be at the kickoff meeting? It's going to be many sponsor representatives because it's usually going to be, at their headquarters or at their office. So you're going to have, the global clinical operations person for the sponsor. You have the executive director. You're going to have the clinical project leader, the clinical trial manager, the clinical operations leader, their data management person, their vendor person, their regulatory affairs person, their biostatistician, their TMF person, TMF specialist. Their director of operations, their medical writing person, and the people from their legal department will be there as well, and their project managers as well too, and maybe a pharmacovigilance person. So you're really going to have a full team of just the sponsor there too. So there's really a lot of people that have the opportunity to come to this meeting. Not everyone shows up in person, some call in, but if you're going to the sponsor, most of them will probably have the opportunity to show up in person. From the CRO side, you're going to have, at least at a minimum, you're going to have the executive director on the project. You're going to have the project director of the project, obviously the project manager, because they're going to be the one, actually running the project. You're going to have the lead CRA, maybe a project coordinator, project specialist type role, the person that's going to take meeting minutes and maybe help facilitate. And that could differentiate between the CRO, like who is there to kind of facilitate the meeting and take meeting minutes and action items, but that person will be there just to take the minutes because that's a job in and of itself, taking minutes for that long. Obviously everyone else will have their notes or whatever too, but there's going to be a dedicated person taking minutes for that meeting. Some CROs are going to have their own facilitator at the kickoff meeting, where they're just going to be there to make sure everyone stays on topic and on task. And that could end up being that project specialist, project coordinator person, or that could be their own separate person. So then for the CRO, you're also going to have site activation person. You're going to have a study startup person, an investigator payments person. I mentioned lead CRA. Maybe a contracts representative, a business development person. And it really depends on, everything that's going to be discussed in the meeting. So if they're not using any vendors, and obviously you're not going to have a vendor representative available. Sometimes they want to talk to all the vendors at a kickoff meeting. So then you're going to have a representative from all the vendors that you'll be using in the clinical trial. You're going to have them call in or show up in person if the sponsor wants it. So this is just an example of a kickoff meeting. This is not the end all be all. There's going to be a lot of differences here depending on the kickoff meeting and the project. But for most of all, the people that attend are going to be the people that I just mentioned, with small variances here and there. Let's see what else. So those are the people that are going to attend. Now, just to give you an example of some of the things that are going to be talked about, you're going to have the goals and objectives of the project. You're going to have them talk about a development plan. So, when you talk about the goals and objectives, you're going to have them talk about like first patient in. You're going to have to talk about milestones. What milestones are important to the sponsor side. Usually first patient in is a big milestone. You're gonna have them talking about the clinical monitoring plan. You're gonna have them talk about all these different plans that they have. When they're gonna have database lock for another milestone. You're gonna talk about the protocol. The protocol is obviously probably gonna be started at this point, and it may be on its way to being finished by the time the kickoff meeting happens. But you're gonna be talking about that. You're gonna talk about, some of the other milestones they may have, like a final analysis or some type of analysis to make sure that they're getting the right data throughout the project. You're gonna talk about protocol, like I said. You're gonna talk about some of the work orders and contracts. You're gonna talk about, obviously, site activation. So you're going to talk about site feasibility and the plan around that. You not only are going to talk about the process, you're going to talk about who is going to be over that. So each project is going to be different. For maybe the CRO is really good at doing site feasibility and knows a lot of sites, or maybe the sponsor does, because a lot of the sponsors are very niche. You may have a rare disease sponsor or something, and so they already have a bunch of sites that they've worked with, so they want to be more in charge of site feasibility and site ID because they know more about it and they already have an infrastructure in place to make it work. So it just kind of depends, but those are two things you're definitely going to talk about. You're going to talk about medical monitoring, site contracts. You're going to talk about the communication plan, which just outlays like the protocol for sending emails and who to talk to, the escalation process if things don't get done, who to escalate to. You're going to talk about the, response times to messages and phone calls and things like that. Not typically a big deal, but, you want everything there in writing just in case there's any problems. So you're going to talk about the training plan, like how people are going to be trained on the protocol and different trainings and SOPs and things of that nature. You're obviously going to talk about the TMF plan. That's a big plan. TMF is the most important deliverable. So you're going to talk about a plan for how you're going to get documents into the TMF, who's going to be responsible for that, escalation there as well. Big deal. You're going to talk about vendor management. Once again, if most people are going to have vendors on the study, so you're going to talk about that. The person, there's usually a PM that there's a project lead, and then there's usually another PM who's just in charge of vendor management, or that could be any other person they designate, maybe their own vendor management person. So you're going to talk about that. They're obviously going to lead that portion of the meeting, but you're going to talk about, the responsibilities in each vendor. If you're using a central lab, if you're using an IVRS system, et cetera, you're going to talk about each of those vendors, who's over it, what they're expected to do, and, getting a work order in place for each of those vendors, so et cetera. You're going to talk about monitoring, the monitoring strategy, if you're going to be using, site monitoring calls, if you're going to be using monitors to actually go to the site, or some kind of version or mix of that. Let's see what else. There's just a lot of things you're going to talk about. You're really going to talk about everything at a high level overview, and that's pretty much it. That's a lot of the big things you're going to talk about that are really important to cover at a kickoff meeting. Once again, each one is going to be slightly different depending on what the sponsor wants, because the sponsor is ultimately the one who's going to be paying for it. So you want to make sure as the CRO that you're giving the sponsor everything they want, and that you're able to talk about everything the sponsor wants to talk about at these meetings, because this is an opportunity for the teams to come face to face and really interface with each other and put their best foot forward and really set the tone for the rest of the project. And you're going to be able to cover everything that you want covered, because there's not going to be a lot of other face-to-face time throughout the project. Face-to-face is obviously expensive because you've got people traveling, a lot of people traveling. You got to put them up in hotel rooms and feed them and things of that nature. So you really want to make sure that you utilize this time to the best possible ability, because there's not going to be much more face-to-face time. Pretty much all the other communication is going to be done via email and phone conversations. So that's pretty much it about a kickoff meeting. It's very important to the clinical trial. And then usually after that, there's going to be the project is going to start, and they're going to have weekly meetings with the sponsor, and just keep them up to date on different things that's going on with the project. And those are going to be done via WebEx, Skype, or over the phone. And pretty much after the kickoff meeting, the project has officially started at that point. So you got to get things going at that point. So that's pretty much it about a kickoff meeting. Guys, if you have any other questions, you can comment them down below in the comment section. You can reach us at eliteclinicalgroup@gmail.com if you have any questions. We love hearing from you guys. Comment down below anything I may have missed about a kickoff meeting. If you have any updates about that, maybe there's some differences that you've noticed with how your kickoff meeting is run or something like that, you can comment that down below as well. And stay tuned for another video soon. All right, take care, guys.